So, does knowledge help your spiritual enlightenment, your spiritual development, your spiritual awakening? So let's talk about that for a moment. I'm going to jump into that, what I was just kind of saying to start this off. Imagine yourself sitting in a temple, sitting in a church, sitting in a lecture hall where there is someone on a stage, and then there is everyone out here, and everyone is listening to whoever that is, the teacher, the speaker, the rabbi, the priest, the whatever, right? So this is the setup, right? So imagine yourself, whatever that is for you. Stage, altar, pews, audience, chairs, right? So as you sit there, you listen. And the person up here is giving you lots of knowledge. They know lots of stuff. They're educated on it. They understand it. Let's say that they are teaching about forgiveness. Forgiveness is this, forgiveness is that. The Buddha says this, the Buddha says that. Christ says this about forgiveness. Joe says this about forgiveness. My experience from the speaker, my experience of forgiveness is this, blah, 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 blah. Right. So there's this person teaching you about forgiveness up here, and then there's you. So you're meant to, subconsciously, meant to glean something and take something from that. And you might. There's no problem with that, really. So you're sitting out here, it's up here. They are up here. Now, if you ever watched the Peanuts back in the day, what happens is in school, Charles Schultz got it exactly right. Because what did he do with the teachers? The kids are in the desks. And then how did he portray the teachers? Teaching their knowledge. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, 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 wah. So that's how the kids got it. They didn't really hear it. They heard wah, 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 wah. So it's the same with you and me. And especially in your spiritual teaching or training, right? We're going to talk about groups this week, but we'll talk about that in a second. So think about that. You walk out of church, temple, even a talk, a New Age talk about forgiveness, and then you go, okay, I think I got some stuff, blah, blah, blah. Now, switch to another completely different scenario. What if you didn't hear any of that, and you have a situation in your life where somebody that you really care about, that you've been connected to for many, many years, does something very, very affronting to you? They cheat on a partner of yours. They lie to you about something very important. Something happens where they betray you, right? Now, in that situation, you have every opportunity to live out what forgiveness really is. Even if you do not forgive them, which there's a whole other part of that, but if you don't forgive them in real life, you're still having a lived experience of this is what's going on, correct? So the knowledge that you have might help, but it's the lived experience that's really going to change you, or not change you, or you're going to learn from, or or it's going to be immediately truthful. I'm not saying that knowledge is bad and experience is good. I'm just trying to point out a very big difference here. There's a difference, a difference, a difference. When you go through a real life situation where you have to look at forgiveness, you come out of that with a different paradigm of yourself. When you just read a book about it, you go to a lecture about it, you don't have a lived experience of it. You just have more what? Knowledge. You just have more knowledge. So knowledge is what the egoic mind is constantly pursuing. There's nothing wrong with knowledge. There's nothing wrong with knowledge at all. Especially in the secular world, let's just say that. In the spiritual world, it's a very interesting thing. We're going to talk about this week too. But in the secular world, to get knowledge about computer programming, about healthy living, whatever, even that, you know, it's not going to work until you actually implement the healthy living. It's not going to work until you actually use the stuff to create the new program on the computer. Doesn't matter. But on a spiritual path, does knowledge really help? So that's the question. Does knowledge really help on your spiritual path? Okay, take a deep breath. Grace says experiential knowledge is the only real knowledge. It just says the more I know, the more stagnant I become. Maybe overwhelmed. That's really interesting. That's a great point, Rachel. I see it all the time. I see it all the time. It's happened to me before. There's a story that Virgos are over analytical. There's a story that Virgos are over analytical, and I happen to be born as a Virgo, and so that story of being over analytical can apply sometimes. And so in the past, I had been like, I'm a knowledge seeker in general. I love it. I love learning more. I love it. That's very different than, you cannot apply that same thing to your spiritual path, because if you do, you're going to stay in the realm of knowledge instead of the realm of experience. That's a declaration that I will say. Nina says, so I think if I was on a spiritual path, I would let things go and be still. So I'm not so sure knowledge would help. That's great, Nina. I love that. Sure. Rachel says, I'm a Libra. I see too many options all the time. The story of the Libra. The story of the Libra. Maria says, I feel knowledge helps me after the experience. Yes. Yeah, that's true. That can be true too. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong, remember? So Maria, let's take that whole thing, is that ultimately, if you have a situation, let's use the forgiveness thing. If you have a situation where you have somebody and there's a forgiveness issue there, you're either going to forgive, you're not going to forgive, you're going to kind of forgive, you're going to forget about it, you're going to bury it, whatever you're going to do without that. And then you have that lived experience, again, love that term. You have that lived experience with that person. And then it either resolves itself or it's not resolving itself or whatever. This is interesting. I didn't even think about this before we started. Then, or in the midst of that, you hear a quote by the Buddha about forgiveness. And that quote, which is outer knowledge, so you get something. While you're having a lived experience, the knowledge pops into that lived experience. Then, guess what? That knowledge can help you in the lived experience and go, oh, I understand what's happening now. Now I can either choose to forgive or not to forgive, or recontextualize the whole thing, so whatever. So I didn't even think about that. That's a really great point you're making there, Maria. I agree. I agree with that. The knowledge sort of supports the experience, such as when improving health habits. Yes, Pamela? Remember, nothing's wrong or right. Karen says yes. So yesterday, before would have been a sad, hard day, now I was so appreciative of the day yesterday, and it was a great day. I chose to use the knowledge to create a great experience. Beautiful. There you go. There you go. Now remember, there is a very big difference between what we are calling a spiritual path and a secular living in the world, right? There isn't really a spiritual path, but let's just say that. So the spiritual path, you don't need any knowledge. You don't need any knowledge. Everything that you need is right here. Your lived experience of your life, your thoughts, your intuition, your fears, your desires, those are all living right here. And those and that and what's happening as life is coming in or coming through. Life is coming in and it's coming through. Okay, so life's coming in, life's coming through, right? So that's all you need. You don't need to read another book about that because it's right here for you. It's all being given for you. I used to say this all the time because I learned it from somebody and I thought it was so true. Everything that you need or you perceive you need is right here in this room, is right here in your life right now, is right here in your job right now, is right here in your financial situation right now. Everything you need is right here. You don't need to read a book about manifestation. You don't need to read a book about Christianity. You don't need a book about Muslimism. You don't need to Islam. Sorry. Anyway, you don't need to read a book about meditation. You don't need to read a book about go research. Although it's fun, but you don't need any of that. That's all just knowledge, but you don't need any of it because the spiritual path is something that is not separate from life itself. You could disagree with that, but that's what I believe. You don't have to believe it, but that's what I'm going to posit to you that you might not have ever thought about before. Or maybe you thought about it a million times. I don't know. Take a deep breath. Okay, let's see what else is coming up for people. Tiffany says, I felt that it just comes. I spent a lot of years trying to be better. Grace says, I heard a cute saying once, knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. Very good. I love that. Grace, that's beautiful. That's freaking awesome. Yes, now I can do things because it brings me joy, not because I need to. That's right. Nina says, does that what comes into play about Dorothy's red shoes? Oh, well, if you don't know about Dorothy's shoes, yes. Look down, Dorothy. I always use Dorothy. Dorothy was given the red slippers at the beginning of the movie. So it's always here right now. There's no knowledge to gain. She didn't need to go through follow the yellow brick road. She didn't need to do that. She could have just stayed where she was in the middle of the swirl and said, there's no place like home. Because Glinda gave her the ability to have it right now. So she was looking all around for it, but she didn't know that she already had it. So that's what we're talking about. And you're totally right, Nina. That's kind of like what we're talking about. Tim says, now there's an application and theory of knowledge. Yes. Rachel says, but how would Dorothy know to look down? The path was necessary. Okay, Rachel, that's great. There's two things happening. There is the illusory world, and there is the truth. The truth will never leave you. What the Wizard of Oz is the perfect story. Some people would say the Bible is. It's the perfect story for the human condition because there's two things happening. I mean, I could really go off, and we will do this, and I've done it before, the breaking down of the Wizard of Oz. There's the black and white world where everything is clear and simple and straightforward. And then there's the world of color that's illusion, that brings you away, that says, oh, let's do this. She falls asleep, she goes into the world of illusion, but she always has the ruby slippers. Even when she comes back in the black and white, there are slippers there, right? Anyway, so this is something in the 3D human illusory world, the egotistical world. It's an illusion. What's happening right here for you probably is an illusion. You're running around trying to find your purpose. You're running around trying to find what works. You're running around trying to get the right thing at the right time and do the right thing and save the right person and make sure that everything, that is the illusion. The other thing that's happening is that there's always the truth going on. Many times, this is the perfect wrap-up. What's happening is the gaining of spiritual knowledge keeps us in the illusion. It doesn't really help you to have truth realization. It doesn't really help you to have any kind of spiritual awakening. It just adds to the illusion, right? When you say everything is right here that we need, what do you mean by everything? What does that include? It means, now we're going to get into the weeds here, but that's okay. Because this is going to be you're going to be like, I don't like that answer. Because you don't need anything. But everything you need is right here. Everything is nothing, and nothing is everything. You don't like that answer, I'm sure. Or your ego doesn't like that answer. You don't need anything, but it's all right here. It's all right here. And nothing is here.